morning and welcome to the Hot Seat with Mel. It is a beautiful Monday morning here in the amazing, gorgeous island of Tobago, and we are an exciting 2 weeks away from the December 6th, 2021 Tobago House of Assembly elections. You know, leadership positions. And based on what we have seen happening last week in the political space, there's been quite a bit of commentary out there. Different perspectives, of course, on how women are seen, as particularly young women on the island. I don't know if you have any opening remarks as we delve into, you know, the challenges that we face.
But of course, what I would hope is that for as many of you out there who are engaged in this conversation right now, that you will appreciate that I am masculine by birth, male by nature, but feminist by practice. And the reason why I say I'm feminist is because I have always been amenable and supportive of women's empowerment and the drive towards their continued uplift and growth. Because I'm very confident that no progressive society can develop meaningfully and benefit from all of the material good of her people if it is done on the basis of only 50% of the human resource, the male folk. You know, and so we must engage all person, we must engage all of our human resources so as to construct the kind of society worthy of our potential. So yes, I'm male. Yes, I'm a man, but I'm feminist.
You know, and Shamari, I'm actually quite happy that you pointed out that you started by saying, you know, I am a male, I'm masculine. Because usually when we speak about gender-based issues or when we speak about, you know, topics like women in leadership, we usually hear the female perspective. But I think there's also something to be said about the male perspective and, of course, what men can do to sort of help us alleviate and to, you know, further the agenda in terms of, you know, placing women on equal footing.
Well, I think the conversation has to start at the beginning. You know, one person said, if you put first things first, second things are not suppressed. Right? So if we start the conversation at the beginning, and my beginning, or the truth of what I believe the beginning to be, is our practice of belief and the spiritual training and underpinning that defined leadership by way of the church and the society. And the historical context of those underpinnings was that men were the one to lead. And so we still have a society that has been built up on the education and the historical training that suggests that when it comes to the advancement of our people, the governance of our community or society, that the male role becomes the essential role in determining the standards of reasonableness or the standards of expectations. We've come a long way from that to date, but the journey continues. Though we've come a long way, some of us have gone the wrong way. Right? And if you go a long way in the wrong way, you would have wasted the preciousness of that day.
actually quite like that. And right. Shamari, I'm glad that you started with church. So let's dissect that a little bit, the role of religion in perpetuating some of these stereotypes. Now, let me ask you this, Shamari. With regards to the separation of church and state, because we've seen that in most modern societies, in developed and in developing countries, where there has been some move towards separating church and state, would you say that religion, Christian values, and the church still has a heavy impact on how women are viewed, the role of women in society?
I certainly think so. Unfortunate though it may be, it is the truth of the situation. It is our reality. Because you would still find that there are large bodies of religious practice that subscribe to religious ideals or spiritual philosophies that still see women as subservient, not only in the necessary or essential contribution to the working of the ministry, but also underclassmanism in respect of what they can do for the advancement of their people, society, or country. Of course, we won't identify those bodies by religious branding for the inappropriateness of it. But we do know that it does exist, and these organizations do represent some of the more formidable religious entities out there. Even so, you find that the burden of responsibility to a reasonable degree also rests squarely on the shoulder of the woman, who oftentimes will have an insight or will have an experience that suggests the idea posited by the male may not necessarily work, but she enjoys retreating into her own singularity for the fear of not being offensive or not coming across as being antagonistic or hostile. And we are saying that in the 21st century, where persons are so advanced in respect of what they believe their reasonable contribution to societal development ought to be, that becomes an offense. Because what it does is it frustrates the process of the growth and development of our people, because now you are sitting on privileged information that undermines the developmental agenda. Women must speak up. Women must speak out. Women must be opinionated. Women must be obviously kind and tender-hearted and sensitive. But if the conversation is that women must be all of those things, in order for women to benefit in a society, a man must be that too.
Correct. And so let's delve deeper into that, because you mentioned that women must speak up and women must speak out, and you're correct in your thinking that we are still quite a conservative society. And I know as a girl growing up, I would always be told women must be seen
and not
heard,
not heard.
Right? And we have seen a push through our various social and educational institutions for women to speak up and speak out. But there still seems to exist a glass ceiling of sorts where that is concerned. We see where speak up and speak out, but in a certain context. Speak up and speak out as it relates to gender issues, but be docile when it comes to issues of leadership. Or speak up and speak out, but only at a certain limit. You cannot be too forceful. You cannot be too assertive. It's seen as almost aggressive. So you see, even in as the campaign heats up, you see where men get on the platform and they tend to be very sort of passionate, and they get their message out there, and it's lauded and it's applauded and it's seen as, yes, he really cares and he'll be a great leader. But then when a woman applies that level of passion as well, she's seen as aggressive. I can't stand the sound of her voice. Why is she so hard?
And in some instances, she's even seen as masculine.
Correct. How do we break those stereotypes and take women out of the mold that society has placed them in?
There must be a radical cultural shift in the way we see the gender roles and the way we assert or put into practice what we believe those gender roles should be. So that I am the father of a daughter and a son, in that order. I kiss my son as I do my daughter. I tell him to his hearing, I love him as I do my daughter. And I remember I was at an event at a time and I kissed my son. And I want to talk about him in particular because I want to create the context to show where the education and training comes in for the empowerment and transformation of our society and people. And so I kissed him and I said to his hearing, so that he can hear my voice, he can understand and feel my passion as I tell him I love him. And a lady, an elderly lady, she asked me, she said, how long you intend to do that for? I said, well, what? She said, kiss your son and tell him that you love him. I said, well, until one of us is dead.
And it was a surprising thing.
Until one of us is dead, because I understand that I have a duty of care to him for as long as either of us may live. And I'm no different with my daughter. The point I'm making while I'm using that example is to show that we have to be able to demonstrate at best humanity and love, because when we do that, then gender roles become insignificant to the contribution of a societal advancement or development, because our acts of kindness and our acts of labor and our services will be done on the basis of love, and love doesn't ask what's the gender performing the service. So that if you were to fall down and you would require a first responder to provide you with a medical intervention or some reasonable attempt at preserving some stability in terms of the preservation of life or limb, you will not protest when you've come back to consciousness that it was a man who touched you.
Indeed. It doesn't matter the gender.
Because life or limb was preserved. And so if we could have that kind of open-mindedness and broadness and maturity in terms of the preservation of life or limb, then it must also translate into how we see the advancement and preservation of society.
I like that, Shamari. I like that a lot. So we're going to cut to a short break, and when we come back, I want us to discuss tokenism as relates to women's issues and women in leadership. We cut for a short break.
Start your morning right with your daily dose of inspiration right here on Music and Entertainment Television, M&ETV.
Tobago. Hi, I am Marlon Calendar, and I'm here in beautiful Pigeon Point. I'm not here for the scenery because you know Tobago has real talent.
So Tobago, we're looking for your talent. You could cook, you could sing, you could dance, you could be a tailor, you could be a jeweler. Whatever is your talent, bring your talent.
And we'll see what Tobago has to offer. Come and meet me in Tobago.
What is television? It seems like a simple question, but television means different things to different people. We in the Caribbean are very unique people. That's why we need unique television. Welcome to M&ETV, where we showcase our lives in the Caribbean. M&ETV is about us, the special way we talk, the way we walk, dance, move. M&ETV is about me. It's about you. M&ETV is about our amazing Caribbean experience.
Here's how the PNM has helped families. 9,600 people benefited from emergency social assistance grants, full support with grants for household items, medical equipment, clothing, textbooks, and more. We have helped over 350 senior citizens with medical alert devices that allow instant contact to emergency services. 500 people benefited from free vision screening island-wide at absolutely no cost.
We getting it done. We building it up. PNM.
10,000 people benefited from our food card program. Those with income challenges due to the pandemic and the increase in food prices. Further 1,300 people benefited from public assistance grants. We are a brother's keeper, giving a hand to those unable to work.
We getting it done. PNM. We building it up. PNM.
500 people benefited from rent relief grants, keeping a roof over the heads of those unable to meet their rental payments.
We getting it done. PNM. We building it up. PNM.
The PNM is helping you out with public and social assistance, medical devices, salary and rent relief, food cards, and more. On December 6th, vote PNM.
PNM.
Whereas we may not have been present in the construction of our history, we have a responsibility to participate in the development of our destiny. The ex gratia, however, is monies that I've given you when I'm going to terminate you to indemnify myself or to free myself of liability.
This is an opportunity right here, this evening, for us to lay the naked facts on the table.
Watson Duke has made no mistake by way of articulating his agenda.
Welcome back to the Hot Seat with Mel. This morning we're talking about women in leadership and gender-based issues, and joining me in the hot seat is Mr. Shamari Hector, also known as Mr. Activate. Now, before the break, I was asking you about tokenism in terms of leadership. Is the involvement that we're seeing of women in leadership and all this talk about having women within the political arena and occupying positions of leadership, you know, on the island, is it just mere tokenism? Is it that we're just tolerating it because it's the politically correct and socially correct thing to do? And how deep-rooted are these stereotypes? You know, this belief that a woman's place is in the home. How deep-rooted and ingrained are they still in our culture? Are we just talking a talk for the sake of including women?
Earlier I would have said, when we put first things first, second things are not suppressed. And so in the conversation about tokenism, let's start by defining what it is. For the fear that whereas it is a word that is loosely spoken of, that persons may not necessarily understand how deep-rooted and how systematic it is, and how much it does influence the behavior of so many societies and so many cultures. In that, at its lowest or basic interpretation, tokenism is a strategy to engage a representative fraction of gender or sex class to engage a conversation that indemnifies or relieves you of a liability or blame. So that you have organizations who practice tokenism, so that in a company of 50 executives that are men, they would have 2 women to show that women have risen to the heights of leadership in our organization and that we are all inclusive and all embracing. But it is not the truth. It is not the truth. It is just to safeguard them from claims specific to gender barriers and that gender ceiling and the likes, and the abuse of the other sex. You know, and so persons have practiced that strategically to look or embracing, to look mature, to look objective, but it is really to safeguard them in the advancement of the specifics or sex-specific agenda. So that's tokenism at its very best. I mean, we could become more philosophical, but that is what it is.
Indeed.
And the truth is that we've practiced tokenism as a society. We've practiced it as a people. I am happy to say that I don't know that that is true for my community of political belief. And I don't want to define that circle as anything else for the purpose of the show. This is the hot seat with Mel, and it is getting heated here.
And you know, Shamari, actually, you might have just walked into a hot seat question. Actually, you walked head first into that one. And you know, the question I have for you, because you would have mentioned your political circle, and you know, it's no secret that you're a member of the People's National Movement. Yes. And one can easily ask the question, for the December 6, 2021 elections, out of 15 candidates vying for political office, we've only seen 4 female candidates out of that group of 15. You know, so how do you reconcile that with all that we've been speaking about?
Well, it has to do with the internal controls and constitution that guides our behavior and our practice. Firstly, let me put on record, being an ambassador of the People's National Movement, how proud I am to be associated with an organization that is as disciplined and that is as structured on the basis of our internal controls. We call that loosely our constitution, right? But it will the birthplace of those kinds of consciousness, those kinds of progressiveness in thinking that led to us being able to create a system of practice internally that allows for equal opportunity, not only under the Constitution and the law as it governs the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, but for the practice of our internal politics in respect of the party. So that now we have, for the very first time, historical we call that creation or opportunity, where we've elected by way of the one man, one vote, the most democratic process to this end of the world, a woman into office, so that my political leader is female. I take great pride in that, because whereas I am male by birth, I am man by nature, I am feminist by practice, right? And so we have a female political leader who is ultimately going to become the first female chief secretary on the island of Tobago. But let's put that in its correct context. You asked, since we're not talking about tokenism, or the conversation of tokenism came up, and we want to know to what extent it exists in our society still, and if it has been so embedded in our political practice in the PNM that it resulted in 4 of 15 women being selected. And the answer is a most forceful, most honest no. I would hope that you understand that the selection of our candidates is not done on the basis of any one person's authority, like those opposite. We have a selection committee that comprises members of the executive of the party, of the Island Council. And those persons would have met and considered. Now, I want you to understand that the head of the selection committee is the political leader. And so, if ever there was any sentiment felt or believed or even perceived that women were not being treated fairly in the screening committee, I would know that the reasonable thing in this circumstance would have been for her to exercise her authority and ensure that the level of equality and equity is administered to the selection, the judicious selection of our members. And so the fact that our political leader, who is female, or intended chief secretary in the respect of the upcoming election, is female, the head of the selection committee is female, and we have had so many women offering themselves for consideration in our internal affairs. The fact that we've arrived at 4 suggests that our political leader, who was head of the selection committee, is confident that those 4 represent the very best that the pool who offered themselves could present in terms of our standard bearers and our intended candidates and assemblymen. If you just look at it, you can appreciate that Maslin, Franca, Nadine, the political leader, have all demonstrated ability and capacity. They are so well integrated in their community that generally they demonstrate leadership, they demonstrate dependability, they demonstrate. And if you look on the other side, and I don't want to create a political divide, because this is a Tobago that I love. We all live here, and on the 7th of December, we all have to harmonize in order to push the developmental agenda further. But if you consider the behavior of those opposite, then you even wonder if they understand that they too are women.
So Shumari, so let's delve into this issue, of gender-based issues and how even women within the political space and women who occupy positions of authority, what they do to advance or even to weaken the cause. Because what we see a lot of times, and something that we haven't fleshed out enough, is this matter of I don't want to call it violence, but bullying of sorts, and kind of scandalizing women. A lot of time it comes from even the other females within and my thinking, I've thought about it a lot, because it's something that's very close to my heart and something that I have spoken out on many occasions. And my thinking is that so many times we feel as women that there's not enough room for us. We almost think that maybe there's 2 spaces or 3 spaces or whatever, a small number of spaces for us. So we sort of fight each other, and we sort of bring each other down so that we make room for us personally to get there. How do you see that? Do you feel like sometimes we are our own enemies?
Certainly. And part of the challenge we have is with how we use, how we understand, and how we put into practice the English language. in that in other languages, a thing is a thing. It has its nature, it has its practice, it even has this numeracy associated with it so that it can be decoded using other interpretive methods. But in English, a cell have about 4 different meanings. It could be a cell phone, it could be a prison, it could be a body cell, it could be like a charger, a battery cell, you know, it could be all these things. It could be a transaction to sell, and it's always based on context. And so the reason why I've said that is because language have caused us to become our own enemies. And language have also caused us to become hypocrites, and we've got to stop it. We have got to stop it. In that if a man were to be hostile or abusive towards a woman, quite naturally that is called abuse. When a woman does it to a woman, that is called entertainment.
I see where you're going with this.
And it's wrong. And we have to stop it. We have to stop it. And women have been abusing women for too long, and us men have sat back being entertained when we should have gotten involved and called on the inputs and the virtues of other women who maybe learned or mature or respected to say, listen, let's come up with a radical education campaign to sensitize women about women's empowerment and their contribution to society. And I am of the view that the reason why us men have been so comfortable doing that is because it provides a justiciable reason for us to do it too.
For us to do it, for the men to do it as well.
Yeah.
You know, Shamari, we have to cut to a short break, but I want us to even get further into that when we return. The difference, the little nuance in the languaging that we use to describe violence, as I like to call it, it's verbal or, you know, bullying against women, the difference in the language that we use when it pertains to men as it pertains to women. So I like that. So we'll cut to a short break. When we come back, we talk about women bullying women.
Start your morning right with your daily dose of inspiration right here on Music and Entertainment Television, M&ETV.
Tobago. Hi, I am Marlon Calendar, and I'm here in beautiful Pigeon Point. I'm not here for the scenery because you know Tobago has real talent.
So Tobago, we're looking for your talent. You could cook, you could sing, you could dance, you could be a tailor, you could be a jeweler. Whatever is your talent, bring your talent.
And we'll see what Tobago has to offer. Come and meet me in Tobago.
Here's how the PNM helped over 2,000 families with housing grants. 109 families benefited from our home improvement subsidy, which provided grants for 50% of home improvement costs up to $20,000.
PNM, we getting it done. We building it up.
Over 400 families realized their dream of home ownership through a beneficiary-owned land program, which assisted families with $50,000.
We getting it done. PNM, we building it up. PNM.
Our home completion program provided over 200 families with grants up to $20,000 to assist those who were unable to complete construction due to financial constraints.
We getting it done. PNM, we building it up. PNM.
Over 1,200 people were given assistance up to $15,000 who needed home repairs through a home improvement grant.
PNM.
The PNM is helping you realize your dream home. On December 6th, vote PNM.
PNM.
What is television? It seems like a simple question, but television means different things to different people. We in the Caribbean are very unique people. That's why we need unique television. Welcome to M&ETV, where we showcase our lives in the Caribbean. M&ETV is about us, the special way we talk, the way we walk, dance, move. M&ETV is about me. It's about you. M&ETV is about our amazing Caribbean experience.
Welcome back to the Hot Seat with Mel. This morning we're discussing women in leadership, women in politics. And just before the break, Shamari Hector, my hot seat guest for this morning, would have mentioned something that's very key to our discussion. He mentioned the languaging and the way that we view men abusing women, verbally at least, and bullying women, as opposed to the way that we view women abusing and bullying women. And Shamari, you would have mentioned that when a man treats a woman a certain way, especially in the political or in the leadership arena, is seen as abuse and is seen as bullying. But when a woman does it, it's seen as entertainment. We laugh about it and we scandalize it, and you know, we get a kick out of it. My question for you, Shamari, is do you believe that women, especially in leadership positions and in the political arena, do these women have a responsibility that transcends any other responsibility that they have to ensure that this sort of treatment is not meted out to other women? And before you even answer, I recall a few years ago, you know, we started a culture here in Tobago where there was a lot of attacks being made against Shamfa Kodjo, you know, MP for Tobago West. And, you know, I remember looking at Shamfa, and one of the things I thought is, wow, she's strong, you know, her back broad.
She is from Bethel, and Church Street in particular.
Very
and I
well.
want you to notice the emphasis on church, because there's nowhere in Bethel named church. There's not a church street
It's
in
pronounced
Bethel.
church.
Church Street.
Church Street.
So Shamfa from Church Street.
So big up to Church Street Bethel this morning, right? Especially women from there. But I also remember, you know, as a woman, and we did not necessarily align politically at the time, but I remember, you know, still speaking out on it, because I felt like regardless of our political differences, regardless of our ideologies, you know, as pertains to different issues, I felt like she was a woman, and she was a woman in leadership, and I literally could not bear to see the way that persons were attacking her. So what do you think is a woman's responsibility?
Listen, some 400 years before the birth of Christ, in the history of the Peloponnesian War, Pericles, a statesman, delivered a funeral oration in celebration of those Antiochs who would have died, those Antioch soldiers who would have died in the war. I told you Pericles was a statesman. He was a well-learned and a respected politician. And he said in that funeral oration, he said, when a citizen is in any way distinguished, he is preferred to the public service, not as a matter of privilege, but as a reward of merit. Now, let's put it in context. He was a part of a society and a system of belief that suggests that men would have been the axis around which a community or society is built. And so we would have had male soldiers, we would have had male politicians, we would have had male elders, we would have had male that and that. And being a skillful politician, some 431 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, who leveled the playing field for all sexes, here was Pericles having a conversation to bring women into consideration. But he skillfully played it because of the politics of the day and his role in society. So he started off by saying, when a citizen, male or female, and then ties it back to the politics and says he is preferred. But the truth is that he was saying that whether male or female, if you are in any way distinguished, you are preferred to public service, not as a matter of privilege, but as a reward of merit. And that suggests that women have been significant contributors to the advancement and development of society from time immemorial. Now, if we juxtapose and transpose the principles there into our practice today, we could appreciate and recognize that Shamfa had no choice but to be strong. Shamfa had no choice but to be forceful. She had no choice but to bear the burden of responsibility, because rested squarely on her shoulder was the hopes and aspirations of every young girl who was looking up to her. Resting squarely on her shoulder was the strength of our ancestors who survived the transatlantic passage. Resting squarely on her shoulder was the sense of respect that she had for her own potentials. And I'm saying that the fact that we could have a Shamfa who, despite formidable opposition, formidable protests, formidable verbal abuse and public assaults, that she would have risen to what we believe to be the heights of excellence in respect of how do we provide service to a society for the advancement of all people. Women have been part of the largest contributors, the largest percentage of persons who were trying to tear Shamfa down,
yes.
who were saying all ill will and all kind of thing about Shamfa. And the truth, and no different to Franca. no different to Franca. But I've learned something. There was a time when we were of the view that Shamfa couldn't bounce back from it. If we have to be very honest, the criticism was so widespread, the lies were so multiple, duplicitous and numerous. And we were of the view that, oh my gosh, this is the unfortunate end of Shamfa Kojo. But Shamfa has demonstrated something, that a lioness like a dragon is never so fierce as when she's wounded, for then she takes her stance believing it is the last. And there is nobody who is more dangerous in a battle than somebody who believes that this is the last one.
They're going all out. They're definitely going all out. You know, I like that you mentioned the verbal abuse and the public assault, you know, and the role of the responsibility of women to, you know, be so strong, to almost have a broad back. And, you know, it brings me back to the fact that sometimes we have to, our backs has to be broader. So we might be smaller most times than men in size, but we have broader backs.
And women in particular, unfortunate though it may be, but it is the truth, generally women have to work twice as hard to get half of what the man got.
Correct. And you know, oftentimes we also face an additional layer of public scrutiny.
Yes.
And in addition to that, society is also less forgiving of the mistakes that we make. So we would have seen this situation with Frank, and you know, we all have a past, man, woman and child. We all, you know, have
it is the hypocrisy of it for me, because men and women are unfortunately and unfairly judged by different standards in society. You know me to be an educator, so I taught for a while. I also did mentorship. I been engaged in community leadership, the politics of school administration, serving as president of the guild. I would have had an opportunity to represent Trinidad and Tobago as a student ambassador long before I was involved in active politics by way of being elected to representation. And so we have always been there. And the reason why I draw on these examples is because as a teacher, educator, mentor, facilitator, I've always said to persons, the hypocrisy of our society is best demonstrated in this illustration. If you have one key that can open any lock, what is that key called? A master key.
A master key.
Nothing complimentary is said about the lock. Nobody says, oh my God, those locks are so accommodating. Look at how it just took those keys and opened up. No, there's nothing complimentary that is said about the lock, and that is the hypocrisy of our society. In that if a man is to get 10 or 100 women, he's a shutter. Let a woman get 2 men.
And we have problems.
And we know what she is.
Correct.
We know what she is. And so if the standard of engagement could celebrate that in our male folk, I'm not saying that is something we should celebrate in our women folk. I'm saying that in terms of decency, in terms of reasonableness, in terms of the respect for other person's views, especially their felt needs and their emotions, that we have a responsibility to hold men to the high standard of excellence like we do for women.
Indeed, and you know, even the scrutiny that women face, you know, a lot of times when men enter public life, we tend to look back at their track record for success or even failure as a yardstick for measuring their ability and their suitability for public office or for a leadership position. So we say, you know, we look at their resume, they were the head of this and they, you know, they did that and they accomplished this and they headed up this company and that kind of thing. However, when a woman puts herself out there for a position of leadership, either in the political or even in the, you know, in the
conversation is about her partners.
Right, her partners, her family life and that kind of thing. And it almost becomes buried even among her, you know, the value that she brings professionally.
And when it is showcased, it is not done as a matter of privilege that suggests that she can contribute, she has something she has offered, she has a history, but it's done as a measure against a man or what some male folk would have done. And so even if we look at the conversation with Franca, And I want to come to her defense right now, because a lot of persons were saying all kinds of things and this and that and that. One member opposite even would have put a public post calling on the community, the Tobago Island community, to pray for her. So somebody put out a video of a woman. You are calling on wide and sustained Tobago community support for the prayer of that person, but we have a high court judgment against your leader, and you to date have not made any public utterances to hold him to any reasonable account. That is an act of hypocrisy.
Of course it is.
But more than that, what it also suggests is that we have been unfairly unkind to Franca, because women have been saying she's a this and she's a that, when the conversation should have been, how do we use the pain and the hurt associated with those experiences to empower other women and girls to ensure that nobody else falls prey to a moment of vulnerability.
So we use it as a learning experience, and we use it as an opportunity to make the necessary changes. And Shema, we're going to go to a break, but you keep on giving me some key points. And when we return from the break, I need us to discuss the unspoken aspect of these attacks against women in society, because we talk about the movement.
The psychosocial impact, the hurt, the pain, the lack of respect for yourself, the fact that people have even given up on the respect that they have for their own life and want to lose it.
Correct. So when we return, let's take a look at that impact that it has on the individual.
Start your morning right with your daily dose of inspiration right here on Music and Entertainment Television, M&ETV.
Tobago, hi, I am Marlon Calendar, and I'm here in beautiful Pigeon Point. I'm not here for the scenery, because you know Tobago has real talent.
So Tobago, we're looking for your talent. You could cook, you could sing, you could dance, you could be a tailor, you could be a jeweler. Whatever is your talent, bring your talent.
And we'll see what Tobago has to offer. Come and meet me in Tobago.
Well, more workers have been sent home, but it's coming from the quarter which fights against terminations, dismissals and the like. Here's more. The largest union in the country, the PSA, has sent home staff. Workers reached out to TV6 saying they got to work today only to realize it was their last day. Employees of the PSA's media center have received letters titled Termination of Services.
Today, the PSA's executive would have made a decision to send home 20 of its office staff. We will be running a very tight ship, a very hard ship. We will be running a very tight ship, a very hard ship.
What do you make of the terminations?
11 workers fought and won against Watson Duke 2 years ago when we were fired. We believe that he always had it in for us. So this is something we knew was coming when he won, or if he had won the election. We believe that he always had it in for us. So this is something we knew was coming when he won, or if he had won the election when he won. Yes, we knew this was coming. It's something in making that he's planning something bigger.
The Progressive Democratic Patriots will ensure that all government workers before December 25th receive an ex-gratia payment. Really? We mean that.
Teaching workforce is too large. That's a problem.
Approximately 67% of Tobago's labor force is employed in government and government-related activities. So we have this crisis of everybody working for government.
Every employee in Tobago, I call upon you tonight to listen. Because I tell you this, that your jobs are in danger.
What is television? It seems like a simple question, but television means different things to different people. We in the Caribbean are very unique people. That's why we need unique television. Welcome to M&ETV, where we showcase our lives in the Caribbean. M&ETV is about us, the special way we talk, the way we walk, dance, move. M&ETV is about me. It's about you. M&ETV is about our amazing Caribbean experience.
And welcome back. Now, before the break, Shamari and I, my hot seat guest, we were discussing the unspoken effects that these attacks against women in public life sometimes has on the woman privately. And, you know, Shamari, I asked you to kind of give me your views on this. What we were speaking in, particularly in the Franca's context, and something that, you know, sort of has stayed with me, you know, since experiencing with Franca what she has been going through, is the fact that no one really stops to think about the impact that it has to the person and also to their families. And I say this to say that on Wednesday I went up to Speyside to offer some support and to be there with her. Franca is a close friend of mine. And what really I think kind of took me out, what really affected me, impacted me, was seeing how her family reacted, the kind of pain that it caused. You know, I saw Franca grew up without parents. Her parents are her grandmother and her grandfather.
Right.
And seeing these two very kind of humble, you know, village people, saw them hold their grandchild and cry. And they seem so fearful for the well-being of that child. You know, and a lot of times we speak about the bigger issues, but we don't even zone in on what it does to the families, what it does to the person, and even what it does to other young women aspiring to life, you know, in the public eye.
No man is an island. So too is no woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so when acts of violence, when abuse is levied on, perpetuated towards, exacted upon a woman or any individual on the whole, there is a psychosocial impact that is more than just the person who is the victim in the situation. If we look at the statistics and we run the numbers, public shaming has been responsible for more suicide than love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So heartbreaks cannot contend with the number of persons who ended their lives prematurely on the basis of a public ridicule, public shaming that was not just done in order to generate conversation, but was a targeted and decisive and deliberate attempt to break the strength of the person and to disrepair his or her character.
And, you know, it's something that we see happening a lot in the Tobago space. It's almost embedded in our culture. And I don't think that persons really take responsibility for what they do. So sometimes you see videos being leaked of young women, and then you see everybody commenting openly on Facebook, send me the video now. Let me see. Inbox me. I want to see.
And it is unfortunate when we should be suppressing the conversation, shutting it down, pivoting the topic to how do we use these experiences to educate, sensitize, empower, and mobilize other women, energize society as a whole to ensure that we create barriers, safe spaces, and positive experiences that can help us get to the next level of excellence as a people. If we were to use the Franca situation, that hurt is deep, the pain is real, the unfortunateness of this situation is inexpressible, but it doesn't change the fact that Franca is a human person that in a moment of vulnerability and in a season of weakness, when attacks were made against her quite deliberately and out of what they believed to be political expediency, what she needed more than anything else was the support of people who can say to her, your best days are still ahead of you.
Exactly so. You know, and I think that sometimes not enough is done to discourage this kind of behavior, you know, and one of the things that I say, especially when I'm practicing in the court, a lot of one of the arguments I always make is that the damage that is created is oftentimes irreversible. A person might be able to get up and dust themselves off, but the damage has already been done, you know. And even where you see matters arising out of abuse towards women, whether it's emotional, verbal, or physical, a lot of times you see that even where redress has been obtained.
How political can I get on your program? After all, this is the hot seat. You know?
I mean, it's the election season.
I should be able to speak freely.
No, you're able to speak freely. It is
so
the election
there is
season.
a High Court judgment that occasioned an audit of the PSA. The audit revealed that a large sum of money cannot be accounted for. In fact, properties have disappeared, properties owned by the PSA. It also indicated that whereas claims have been made for a pension plan, no pension has been registered. Now, let's just look at the danger of an opinion and a suggestion and how deliberate it can be to plant a seed that cannot be forgotten. The question can be asked, if $3.2 million were put in a pension plan, but no pension has been registered, is that what funded DSS? Is that escrow DSS? Is that pension DSS? Where is the money? So, and I'm saying that, yes, to trigger a thought because I want us to be cognizant of it, but I also want us to understand that there are some things that are irreversible, some words that are spoken plant seeds. But as we get to the point of seeds, I want to encourage Franca. In fact, Franca has demonstrated best that they tried to bury her. They didn't realize she was a seed. So what they did was put her in an environment to unleash exponential growth, and she's demonstrated that quite well because she owned up to it, and she's now saying, listen, I want to use the burden of these experiences to empower women and girls.
Good. And you know what I quite liked, what I enjoyed seeing Shamari, and I think it gave me a glimmer of hope, is seeing the sort of mentorship and love being extended to Franca, especially among, you know, more experienced women in leadership. So you would have seen the Honorable MP for Tobago East, you would have seen, you know, Mrs. Roy, embrace Franca at a time where she herself could have felt hurt, where she could have taken offense, and where she could have retaliated, and in and of herself could have meted out an act of violence against woman. Franca as another woman. Instead, what she chose to do was to use her nurturing skills, use her maturity, use her experience, and use her femininity
to mentor and to guide
and embrace Franca in a certain kind of way and change the narrative. And what I am hoping that we would begin to see here in the Tobago space, because before the break I asked you whether or not you think that as women we have an additional responsibility that transcends any other responsibility that we have, and responsibility to embrace and to protect fellow women. And I'm hoping that what we would have seen Mrs. Roy do, I'm hoping that we would see a whole lot more of that happening in the public space, in the political space, in areas of leadership where you see younger women needing guidance, where we as women use, because there's beauty in being feminine, there's beauty in being a woman, the kind of level of care and nurturing that we have, a man could never have. I can tell you that categorically. And how we use that to then strengthen women and to ensure that we're properly represented in the public space.
We really need more of that. And you know, I tip my hat in commendations to the minister who used that nurture, that motherhood, her femininity to embrace her sister who may have been caught in a moment of vulnerability. And I'm saying that we have to go further together. We have to do more. And yes, there's this additional burden on women to uphold and to support other women and to suppress conversations that are designed for their hurt and for the frustration of their professional image and character, or the advancement of them in our open and reasonable society or market. But it also rests squarely on the shoulders of men. Because I can tell you this thing, those women who have been ill-speaking Franca, they have men. Why didn't their men say, don't be a part of that conversation, girl, it doesn't represent you well?
Indeed, actually like that, they have men, so the responsibility falls on
men,
both.
It's not sex or gender specific. If we're talking about being mature as a people and contributing to the advancement and the development of society, we have to bear the burden of responsibility equally.
Equally, I like that actually. The equal rights and justice doesn't only mean it has certain sphere, but it also means the responsibility for ensuring that women are treated fairly. You know, Shamari, so we have to wrap up shortly, but do you have any closing words of maybe encouragement or even advice for all the women out there on the campaign trail right now as we head towards December 6th?
I do, and I want to put it in the context of a quote, a poem by Rumi. And in that poem, I won't say it verbatim because I don't remember all of it, but the spirit of it is that Rumi said, I want to apologize for all the men and all the times we have called a woman beautiful or sexy or adorable or loving. Not that she isn't, but because she's so much more than that. Our language should be that she's strong, she's enduring, she's forceful, she is passionate, you know, she's committed, she contributes. And I would say that in order to suggest that that is the kind of language, that is the kind of conversations that we should be having as a society. Conversations that empower and not disempower, that build up and not tear down. In fact, it was Martin Luther who said, when evil men plot, good men must build and bind. When evil men burn and bomb, good men must build and bind. When evil men shout ugly words of hatred, good men must commit themselves to the glories of love. And where evil men will seek to perpetuate an unjust status quo, good men must seek to bring into being a real order of justice. Let's substitute the phrase good men for a good society.
I like that.
A good society. A good society must seek to bring into being a real order of justice. And so we can't be burning bridges and telling our women folk that we're trying to light the way.
I like that, you know, and if I had to say anything to add to that, I mean, there's not much more else that can be said, but what I would say is after everything has been said and done, what I would hope to see for the next 2 weeks is a woman-centric and a woman-focused campaign, one where our female candidates really start to take a critical look at the issues affecting women here on the island.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we're not so much concerned with your ability to fight the election, but we're more concerned about your ability to represent us in a certain kind of way and to alleviate some of the issues that we face on the island. So go forth, be great, and of course stay tuned for tomorrow's episode of The Hot Seat with Mel right here on Facebook Live.